Hey guys, Jay, welcome back to the channel. Oh man, guys, there comes a time that I'm really truly happy to be Canadian. I mean, seriously, there aren't that many times I can actually say, "Hey, I'm happy to be Canadian," but today is definitely one of those times. And I have some other friends of the channel who, of course, are Canadian, who will have to join me for this wonderful occasion because we're getting to talk to two very legendary comic book writers and creators in the industry who have touched many of our lives. I think all of our lives. Anyone who was born in the '80s and watched cartoons and read Marvel comics and read DC comics and just had comics in general. Today is a very, very special day here on Comix Asylum, on Mega J Retro, on Toy Connections. As a matter of fact, why don't I bring in the Toy Connection guru himself, my friend, of course, Ken. What's going on, Ken? How you doing tonight?
Oh, to be Canadian today, and for a campaign that, from what I last checked, is about 97%
We are
funded
so
with 9
close.
days to go.
We are
And I
so
mean, it's
close.
like you see the
So
word
close.
Mounties in the title, and you're just kind of like, I hope this does well. And then you see
Oh,
the feedback, you see that it's doing well, and you're just kind of like, okay, we got the validation. I mean, you got legends in the comic industry, and by extension,
mhm.
toy industry and other stuff, kind of doing all this. And it's just like, yeah, it's kind of just an easy project to support. You see the names involved, you see the synopsis, especially in an era right now where you have a lot of Kickstarters going out there, and it's just like a lot of stuff to occupy your bandwidth mentally. You need something to kind of like make a splash and get your attention in a time when it's hard to get your attention, and this does exactly
Absolutely.
that.
100%. I think it's captured a lot of people's imagination. It's got, some horror in it. It's got some fantasy in it. And of course, it's got Mounties. Who doesn't, why? This is like the perfect scenario. Let's bring in another knucklehead to join us, of course, from Comics Asylum. Steve, what's going on, brother? How you doing tonight?
Gents, everything's good. Pleasure to be here. Absolutely stoked to talk about this Kickstarter campaign, especially with the two legendary people behind it,
Oh,
and
man.
the fact that it's
Oh,
got
man.
the Canadian flavor, and it's Canada
Yeah,
Fly.
that's right. Canada
You
Fly.
know, cannot complain. I'm really happy that it's almost there, and I can't wait to talk about it some more.
We are so close, literally a couple $1,000s away, and we want to make the last few days of this a really big push, and that's why I invited both of our two guests to join us today to talk a little bit more about the book, and of course about their history with comic books, and of course with toys and everything. Guys, please help us welcome our first guest, who's been on the stream before. He was promoting his latest comic book endeavor, as well as the statues that were associated with it. We had a lot of fun the last time he was here. Guys, please help us welcome another legendary comic book creator, Guy Dorian Senior. Guy, how are you doing today, my friend?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys,
Guy.
man. Hi, Steve, Ken, and Jay, and uh, um, I just spent the weekend with Larry and a couple of my friends and all that stuff, and it was a good time. And thanks for having me on the show. I just want to thank you,
No, absolutely. We're
and
excited to have you, and we can see some furry friends in the background there.
yeah,
You know,
this is a huge studio I have, and there's all kinds of stuff like this. You're only seeing a smidgen of it, and I'm a collector, and what got me started was I saw Jay, and it's just guys, hey guys, and then I felt like I was in part of it because he said that a lot, and I felt like he was talking to me, and then uh, you know people say I used to not be involved in any of this stuff, and then it came back to me. I do other things in my life, and I had to start collecting again. I had to start getting and so I started collecting. I got into collecting again after a long time hiatus from collecting, and that was it. When I saw Jay, I was like, this guy knows. He's got his finger on the pulse of everything I love. He knows all this stuff. He's talking He-Man. He's talking Masters. He's talking GI Joe. He's talking all these figures, and luckily I get to meet you guys as well now too. And you know, it used to be uncool to be a comic geek.
yeah.
But as people, I use the meek shall inherit the earth. I say the geek shall inherit the earth, and
Yes,
we have it.
absolutely.
So,
100%.
so I just love it, and thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
100%. We're so excited about your newest project. So let's bring in your partner in crime with this one. You've known him forever, and you guys are very good friends. And now you get to collaborate on an incredible project. Of course, the Canadians are very excited about this project. We're over the moon with
I
this.
love Canadians, by the way. Every Canadian I've ever met was so
Thank you very
cool.
much.
So let's go ahead and bring in the creator, the co-creator of this, and just an amazing project. Guys, please help us welcome someone who's again touched all of us in some little way growing up in the 80s, Mr. Larry Hama. Larry, how are you tonight? Oh my God,
I'm doing good.
great to see you, sir. We are very excited to have the two of you here. First of all, let's just get a little bit of things out of the way. You guys were spending a lot of time together this weekend. How was DragonCon? Like that was it? What was the experience like there?
Oh, it was fabulous. It was. I hadn't even realized it was 5 days now. it's they keep creeping up. Like they keep making Mondays longer, and now Thursday is a whole day. So people used to have to drive in by at least Wednesday just to get parking, and now they're showing up like on Tuesday. So
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
It was exhausting. I got to ride the Cobra Stinger in the parade,
Wow,
which was really cool. Yeah.
incredible. And
I had-
Guy,
I had-
how was your experience?
I had a lot of fun. I had Larry on the side, one side of me, my wife next to me, and then my buddy Chris Ryall, who I'm really close with too. And so that in itself is great. I get to see my con family over the weekend, and the con was great. The people were great. The people running the con were great. I haven't seen that much cosplay in a long time, and it's just right, Larry.
Yeah.
And even as a friend of Larry's for many years now, it's like we don't always get to sit next to each other. I think the last time we sat next to each other was at New York Comic Con. I think I had Ron Garney on one side, and Larry on the other. But to see the amount of Joe fans, the love that they gave to Larry when they came up, that people weren't just thankful. They were like, you were everything to me. And as a friend of his, I get touched by that, just seeing the mark that he's made with these people. But the admiration and adoration and all that jazz was to get to see it in that way at that con. That con is a different type of a con. That's a volunteer run con. That is a cosplayer con. I mean, the people doing that are all that. And it was great to see.
Incredible. And you know what? The community really has grown, as you guys have mentioned earlier, and it's incredible. As you said, the acceptance level of geekdom in the world. The fact that we have shows like the Big Bang Theory and other highlights like that, and of course the testament to everything that's happening. Transformers is in theaters, G.I. Joe is in theaters, and now we have a crossover of G.I. Joe and Transformers at the same time. Who would have thought that we would have come so far in such a little time? And of course, it has to do with both of you two. I mean, Guy, your involvement with Marvel, Larry, your involvement with Wolverine, the G.I. Joe, Transformers, all that stuff. A lot of it comes straight from you guys, and we're very, very happy and humbled to have both of you here. Ken, really quickly before we get started, I think it goes without saying, Steve, that we as Canadians are very, very excited about this book. I mean, Werewolves, first of all, and then of course Mounties. When you guys heard about this project, what were your thoughts? Because I was like, what? This is like the perfect project. How can you get anything better than Werewolves and Mounties? This is crazy, Ken.
You see the title and you go, whoa, that's an interesting mix. And then you see the name behind it and you go, okay, this is gonna work. You know what I mean? I'm not just saying that because they're on screen, but it's like it's something that, like, I don't know that anyone can just go and tackle, right? You kind of need that experience of having done multiple different kinds of fiction before at a successful level, and then so that you can kind of trust something like this in the hands of those kinds of people. When I read the backstory, the fact that it takes place over 100 years ago, and you've kind of got this war veteran in David Lawrence, so he's got his memories from the war and everything, and he comes back and he's a Mountie, and then there's werewolves in the area. It builds up a lot of intrigue, and as you're kind of reading the synopsis on the Kickstarter, you just keep going, "What's next? What's next? I wonder what's next. I wonder where they're going with this." And I think that's going to be a lot of the foundation of the success. So I don't know. I mean, Steve, did you have kind of the same thoughts, or where were you going with this?
You're echoing my thoughts exactly, and then also coming from an art background, the iconic nature of werewolves, because they're one of the standout monsters in the genre, and then you think of Mounties, who are so iconic, with the red coat, the hat, through various different types of media throughout the years, whether it's W. Do Right or Due South, those kind of shows that we had in the late 80s, 90s.
Yes.
And then it being such an iconic part of the fabric of being a Canadian in terms of like almost like our super cop of, forming the country. And then you mix it into werewolves. It just not only just piqued my interest, but it's like, how are these two legends going to make this work? I can't wait to see it come to fruition.
Absolutely. So now that the Canadians have finished talking, I think that we should let the two creators go at it. Guy, Larry, how did something like this happen? I mean, this is absolutely incredible. I mean, like, just looking at the let me just share the screen. Where are we here? Yeah, just having you guys here and to talk about this. And of course, guys, we are sitting at $33,891 of a $35,000 goal. We're so close, like literally. I think it's like just under $2,000 before we hit a little over $2,000 before we hit the final goal. But how did you guys come up with this idea?
Oh,
I mean,
less than that.
yeah, you know what? My math is terrible. My math is terrible.
Yeah, it's
A little over 1,000.
A little over 1,000. That's right. See,
Yeah.
this is how much my math is. By the way, Canadian math is different from American. I'm just
no slide rule. Okay.
We got Celsius, they got Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
yeah. So, guys, how did you come up with
It's
this?
literally loony.
It is. Exactly. You got it, Larry. How did you come up with this story? And tell us a little bit more about the background. And what
Okay, about 10 years ago, my friend David Morris, who was, I knew from 40 years ago, 50 years ago, he was an advertising executive. He was from Ottawa, born and raised. And we worked on a bunch of projects together. He got me to work on the very first Nintendo print campaign in the United States. And my partner Michael Sullivan at the time, we created these props and shot a whole print ad for Nintendo, and we had never heard of Nintendo at that point. And Mike said, "Oh, Nintendo, what a crappy name! It's never going to go anywhere." And so we did the Space Invaders type game ad, and then they asked us to do a Donkey Kong ad. And Michael commented, "Oh, well, where's the donkey?" None of us thought any of that would happen. But anyway, David, about 10 years ago, called me and said, Canada funds all this stuff, with Canadian content. We should try to come up with something, And he said, "What do you got?" So I went home and I was doing some research. The very first comic story that I did for Marvel was a black and white werewolf story. So. And I'd also been doing a lot of black and white horror stuff at that point. It was the early 70s. I was trying to break in, couldn't get in the door at DC or Marvel. So I was doing black and white horror and a lot of stuff for National Lampoon and things for Children's Television Workshop and illustrations for Esquire and Rolling Stone and New York Magazine. Um, and I also was remembering from a kid watching Sergeant Preston of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police on TV.
Mm.
You guys are probably too young to even remember that show, but it was a very popular show in that era. And then there was that Untouchables movie that had that whole segment in the Northwest with the RCMPs, and I'd always thought, wow, this would be really really cool to do something like this. And then after I saw Deadwood, I was all started to gel in my mind that it was the period piece, in the Northwest, uh, and there's werewolves and there's a secret Mountie unit whose only purpose is to keep the werewolves in check and keep it all under the lid and prevent them from spreading south to the populated areas. Um, and then I just started seeing these images in my head, which is the way I work. I've never identified as a writer. I don't call myself a writer. I'm a penciler with a word processor. Um, Look, I had to draw comics for 15 years before they let me write one. They would always say, you're a writer. You can't, you're a drawer. You can't write comics. Um, well, that was because all the editors were writers. And if if they started letting the artists write their own stuff, they'd be spitting in their own wallets. So, well, that's basically how it came about. And, it just sort of withered on the vine for 10 years, all the time. But all the time I was adding to it and, I bought like 30 or 40 books doing the research over those years, made a lot of sketches, um, and just tried to visualize the whole thing. Um, and That's the way I work. I see the whole thing as a series of images, and the words come to me dead last. Um, so, you know, it was just sitting there, and I was talking to Guy one day, and he said, "Oh, let's, what else can we do together?" And I said, "Well, I got this old thing that's been sitting around, but I really had a lot of faith in it." And I showed it to Guy, and he said, "Yeah, this is we should run with this." So, and the rest of it is Guy's story. So,
Incredible.
Yeah. So one thing that, like I said earlier, I'm sort of, you won't see my name on everything, but I'm sort of like if there was ever a TV or movie producer that was a comic book producer who doesn't work for the big companies or anything like that necessarily. I have, but I produce things and I make them happen. I'll get all the writers, artists, letters, this, that, everything, do all the media, blah, 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 everything. Uh, uh, there's not too many guys in my industry who are willing to take up that mantle. It's a mammoth task. It is a mammoth task to do that. Luckily, I have an incredibly talented son who's also a screenwriter and all that stuff, and he'll learn. He did that trailer. My son did that trailer. Never knew how to do it. He just goes, "I'm going to make a trailer." I'm not an artist, Dad, but he did it. But anyway, um, I like to work with the people that I know, and because usually they're all running in the same circles anyway, and I know they're great at what they do. So it's pretty simple to come up with that thing. And Larry Hama's a giveaway. It's like, oh well, that's a no brainer. But people bring me their stuff all the time. I'd say over the last month, I've gotten about 15 solicitations from artists and creators and everything. But I just like to work with people I work with anyway. So I was really, it's a gift to me that Larry said, "Hey, man, I got this thing, Mounties vs. Werewolves." I feel it's like a gift. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then when he said Mounties vs., it's not, I love military stuff and I could do it, and we have other stuff that we've been working on that you'll hear about in the future. That's military style stuff, but I'm a freaking horror guy and I love monsters, and I'm really great at creating the designs for monsters. And when Larry said Mounties versus Werewolves, I was like, oh my gosh, it was like a breath of fresh air. And I was like, man, we have got to do this. It took a little while. My wife was very ill, and we were trying to get through all that. And Larry, of course, a big supporter of my family and all that, and all that. So we went and did it. I think this is going to be one of an incredible thing for Larry and I. It's just one of those things that just gels, and it's going to do everything that we could want. And someone was asking Larry. I'm not talking for Larry, but I saw that someone had asked Larry, like, "Well, how long do you expect to do this?" And Larry said, "Well, forever. Why would I not continue doing it?" So I'm really glad that people are jumping aboard, because this is going to be a long-term thing. And it appears, I never say successful until I see that made 35. Once it hits 35, I'll go, okay, all right. And I know we're that close, but still, I never say anything until it's there. But Larry and I are going to keep this going on. And I have ties with toys, comics, games, movies, television, everything. And I intend on this being everything that it can be, and getting it to where it has to be. And as a personal friend of Larry's, I believe that first I thank Larry for trusting in me to do it and make it happen. But I believe Larry deserves ownerships of things that he creates, like real, full, solid ownerships of the things he creates. And there's so many things. If you get me on a rant, I'll start like getting in trouble if I start saying things I want to say about things that I think Larry deserves, that he hasn't gotten. But we'll leave that there. I just it's a great thing, and I think it's just a perfect time for this. It's a perfect time.
You're muted, by the way,
You're
Jay.
muted.
Jay.
I hate that. Just listen to you guys talk about how this thing all came together. It just gives me chills, and I love the background. The fact that there's a secret society of Mounties taking care, making sure that no one of these creatures are contained and don't get out. It brings shades of like pulp culture, from like Underworld to what's it called, the Kinsmen. You know what I mean? Like all these secret agencies that no one's ever heard of, but again are secretly protecting us. And of course, these secret societies that have existed for centuries or even longer, that are trying to come out of the shadows and take over. I eat that stuff up. So I am over the moon with this. So yeah, and who better to create something like this than the two of you? Again, legendary writers and creators that have come together on this. Steve, Ken, like I'm over the moon here. What are you guys thinking?
I'm amazed, not only the concept but also the team that's working with Larry and Guy, like Salvi Shema, Scott, Hannah. Can you, Guy or Larry, can you give us some more info on exactly what that all-star band you've put together to help bring Mounties versus Wolverines to fruition?
I'll talk on that because that's my field. That's my area. I do that all the time. I did it over at John Carpenter's when I worked with John Carpenter and Sandy Carpenter on their stuff, and I'm just good with that. But like I said, these are my pals. So I just, hey, you want to do something? Hey, you want to do something? It's usually my ideas, by the way. Usually all the projects come from my brain. But I just such an admiration for Larry, and knowing the potentials in certain things. It's just incredibly brilliant. So, um, I put together a team of people that I think are tried and true phenoms of the industry. So we've got Scott Hanna, Larry Hama. Sal Buscema has been my inker for the last like 14 years. We're really good pals, and I have him work with me on everything. We did ROM together, and we did Hyperbreed together with Louise Simonson, and all that. Scott Hanna is just one of the greatest thinkers of who's ever touched paper. J.K. Woodward and Kevin Conrad, they're just absolute professionals. And you've got Kelly Jones. I mean, Kelly Jones is just absolutely brilliant. Everyone knows this. So, I'm not gonna do. I like to do when I do martial arts, I know the best people in the world. When I do anything, it's the best people in the world. These guys are the best in the world. They're part of the crew of the best in the world, and it's also a team. Like Kevin Conrad worked on Kiss Psycho Circus with over at McFarlane. That's the kind of thing this story needs. It needs that darkness, the black shadows and lighting and atmosphere. Creators that do that. I specifically chose them that way. People who could create emotion with imagery. We're here as a support system for Larry. Larry's the guy. He's going to write it. He usually, the way Larry and I usually work is Larry will do layouts and he'll send it over to me, and then I draw them. I'll take the character and then I'll put my own design on it, or some I'll design, or some he'll send me drawings of, but whatever. But the thing is that Larry and I know how to work well together. The thing about Larry being an artist, that is a different animal that makes it super amazing. Because here's the thing I like. I work with people from all over the world and on all kinds of things. And I love all the writers. But when you got someone, you have a writer who could sit there. So my job usually is when I'm an illustrator, I get the script in. The writers can come up with pieces of things and scenes and write scenes based on how to write a scene, what they should do and the steps that they take in their writing. They know how to fulfill creating characters and giving different voices to characters and everything. But many writers I've talked to can't actually they can't draw it. They can't visualize it in the same way. So it's like the way you visualize a dream. You can dream it. You could say this happened in your dream, but actually you didn't see all that in your dream. You saw pieces of it in your dream. You don't know that. You connect it as a story, as a writer. So if you were to write it down, but you can't connect it visually. I do that. But Larry can take the absolute vision of his thought process, vision of his writing. He understands character better than anyone I know. And he can lay it out. And when I get it, obviously there's a lot of drawing I'm doing and putting my own thing into there. But what he does is the vision of it is the truest vision of that story that comes out right as he does it in an abstract way that can't be done in any other way. And that's the way Larry and I usually work. And it works well because I know this stuff and I know how to draw and I know how to put it together. And I myself am involved in a lot of other things that have to do with writing. I'm dyslexic and I'm attention deficit disorder. I'm hyperactive. There's no way I can sit down and just write a script. I wrote something. I've written stuff before, and I give it to my son, who's a screenwriter, and he goes, there was this scene in what is that? A Philadelphia TV show. I can't remember the name of it. With Danny DeVito.
It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah, where one of the characters writes something, but he's dyslexic and everything, and he's ADHD, and he writes it, and nobody knows what the hell he wrote. That I'll write an entire thing, and it's fantastic, but nobody knows what the hell I wrote because I skip words, I write them wrong, I type them backward. Anyway, working with Larry's it's just the most true vision of any story you can get. And this, there are a few pages that when we first started that Larry sent to me, and I knew once I saw them that this is the perfect collaboration and everyone involved. And this is, things happen at their time. Like Larry said, he came up with this years ago. And we actually started talking about it like 2 years ago or something, right, Larry? But
at least, yeah.
Yeah, but we needed our time. We needed everything to fall into place. I needed to know when. I've never done Kickstarters. That wasn't a thing that I do, and I only wanted to do it with Larry. And this is the time, and it's perfect.
Well, it's. I'm sort of used to a lag time. It was like over 8 years from when I first created Bucky O'Hare until we actually got it printed and published. It was, but when we finally did it, we had a toy line from Hasbro and a TV show and sold 100 licenses. So I understand and accept the long lag times.
Me too. I understand that too. Working with TV and film, you
understand it more if you work in video games.
I did artwork on a Marvel video game. I didn't have to do the other process.
Well, I wrote I wrote the script for all the cutscenes for the Activision Wolverine's Revenge game.
Yeah,
it was 120 pages of cutscenes. And it was like, that's a screenplay, 120 pages. Basically, and
I think I did Sean Shen on cutscenes for X-Men.
Yeah, that took me, like a couple of months to do, and when I, maybe 3 months, and when I finally handed it in, they said, "Oh, this is great. Now can you storyboard the whole thing?" Well, that's going to take quite a long time. And they said, well, we're a video game company. We're used to spending years on this stuff. So it took me 6 months to board the whole thing.
And what I'd like to say is when you walk into anyone looking to back the comic, it's a double-sized comic, by the way, first debut issue. So it's fantastic. But you're getting professional people who've worked on these things for many years. So you get you put Larry, when did you start in the industry?
I sold my first cartoon in 1966 to Castle of Frankenstein magazine.
So from 1966 till now, everyone and everybody's, and so he's got that many years, and I've got 30 years, and he's got like 55 or whatever it is, and I got 30 years, and you add it all up, you got 200 years worth of knowledge going into this stuff. So you can trust that we're going to make it the best it can be.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm fairly fast. About 4 years ago, I was laying out 4 books a month at DC.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
The Deathstroke was the major one, and Michael Cray and 2 other books. because DC had all these artists that could draw like crazy. You know, they were much better draftsmen. I'm not a finish guy. I'm a storytelling and concept guy. Um, and you know, I had done this before at Marvel. I used to lay out stories for the new guys. Um, I laid out my 2 or 3 issues of Daredevil and a couple of issues of Moon Knight and things like that. So, but you know, I I never tell the companies how fast I am. You know, it's going to take at least 2 weeks. You know, but I can, you know, I laid out, wrote and did breakdowns. You know, pretty tight pencils without shadows for GI Joe Silent Interlude. I did that whole job in 3 days over the weekend. Um, and Steve Lealoa inked it in like 2.5 days, 3 days.
Crazy, crazy.
Yeah. So because we only had a week or a week and change to get it out the door, and we did it. Um, so uh, putting putting uh, images in sequential order so that they tell a story is my basic skill. My basic skill
It's
set.
a phenomenal one. It's a
And
phenomenal.
because you know once I figure out the storytelling, I sort of start to lose interest. I'm not into noodling and
Yeah, like
putting in lots of
storyboarder.
detail, you know, and you know
And
when
that's where I come.
you know, I started out as Wally Wood's assistant,
Yeah.
and you know, and Woody always admitted that you know the reason all of his stuff was like packed full of detail and noodled and noodled and noodled was that he was very insecure about his own drawing ability. And I was like, you're Wally Wood and you're insecure about your drawing? And he said, well, yeah, look at, you know, he said he looked all around him at everybody else that was drawing for EC. And it was like Al Williamson, you know, and, you know, guys like that, Bernard Krigstein. Uh, these guys were phenomenal artists who could, and it was like natural to them.
And
You know?
I got to say, there's still. I was a few years ago. I was at. I think when we sat next to each other, Larry and Ron was there on the other side. Dan Penosian came over, and we're all talking. And you know, we all have our own securities. To not to get off subject about Mounties versus Werewolves, but couldn't hurt to talk about this real quick. And what he's saying is true. It still goes on for all of us. We all have these like the reason one of the things that makes us want to continue doing stuff is that we're insecure about the shit we did before. So we want to,
Exactly.
yeah. And like Dan Penosian comes over and he goes, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I feel really insecure next to Larry Hama and Ron Garney and Jason Alexander was right over there. I'm like, what the hell? I'm sitting in this line with these guys, and Dan comes over and he goes, you know what, guys, we all feel this way, but look around you. You know, you have to take note that it was New York Comic Con Artist Alley. He's like, these are the best people in the world. We're part of the best people in the world, you know, and that realization lasts about 2 seconds before we go, I suck, you know, but still,
Well, you
still,
know, I mean, uh, I I worked at Continuity in New York. I had the drawing table right next to Neil Adams for 3 years. Um, and I was sitting there because nobody else wanted to sit in that seat. It was
it's a hot.
too intimidating to be under the eye. And because he made no bones about, you know, criticizing stuff. You know, if you didn't
Hey,
like it,
Larry,
he told you. You know?
who was the illustrator of your first of your old horror? Where you sent me a picture of a werewolf, so you guys get a little backstory. Larry sent me an image of a werewolf that he really liked, and you know, Larry's thought process on this is
Well,
as a
that was inked by Neil Adams.
that's why I
Yeah,
thought it was. That's why I was bringing that up. It was a werewolf, and it was inked by Neil Adams. It was a horror story in Erie. What was it in?
It was originally for one of the black and white um, Marvel books, but I
Mm.
think they canceled the book, and it was published in France in Echo des Savants.
And
Um,
now you got French people
but
in the Mounties
yeah,
versus Werewolves.
only in French, though, you know. And but I had to design that werewolf. I looked at other werewolf designs, and they were mostly sort of variations on the Lon Chaney look, which is basically a human with a lot of hair on his face.
Yeah, and
Uh, yeah, so I thought I'd rather have this massive human body covered with, with a tail and lots of fur and a real sort of wolf's head, sitting on top of it with an elongated snout and bigger teeth. Um,
yeah, and I
and
know.
and human hands or claws, human hands and arms, but with wolf hindquarters and tail.
See, that's the cool
Uh,
stuff. That's the
yeah,
cool
so
stuff. Those types of
I don't think anybody else had done that before I did it. That was in 1971 or 72. But boy, have I seen a lot of other people doing that design concept
after
since.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's good though, because they're only going to copy the best anyway. And that's the thing I love about Larry too, is that as an illustrator himself, uh, usually it's just me doing the art process as far as coming up with everything, which as far as illustration is concerned, as far as the physical final looks and designs. It's obviously a full collaboration with everyone. But as far as visualizing it, yeah, that's obviously me. But not with this. With this, I get to do some. I'll do parts. I'll do some. I'll show it to Larry, and I'm sure we're gonna have creatures in there where Larry's gonna let me do the thing that I do, is create body horror and monster horror. I don't know. I'm hoping. We'll see. But I'll tell you, the David Lawrence. I draw a lot of kind of Ramita-esque, if you will. Like everybody becomes too beautiful, and Peter Parker got the glow up from Ramita from Ditko, and when Larry said to me when I first did David Lawrence, he said, he was moving more towards the Hammer kind of visual, and the characters aren't so heroic and like this. They're into that horror genre, and then it instantly changed the thought process. I knew where he wanted to go after that, and we have David Lawrence there on there. He's still pretty tough looking, but he's much more into that Hammer style, with oh gosh, what's his name, Larry? The actor. Oh, why am I forgetting his
Peter
name?
Cushing, you talking
Peter
about?
Cushing.
Or?
Peter
Yeah,
Cushing. Yeah,
okay.
there's some Peter Cushing in there now, and it changed
Mhm.
my thought process on the character, and um, and it works. And anyway, uh, I'll let you guys talk.
No,
Yeah. Hit us
we're
with questions.
we're 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 enthralled by these amazing, deep dives into what you guys have invested in this project. I mean,
It's quite a process, right? I mean,
yeah.
there's a lot
I
that
mean,
goes into it that most people don't think about.
yeah, Ken, like, do you have any insights or to share, or questions that you'd like to pose? Like,
I mean, it's not so much insights, more so as like, you've got this character that you developed called like, well, David Lawrence, right? It's set in 1922. He's a veteran of the war. Do you plan? Maybe this is spoiler esque. Do you plan to show like flashback sequences from the war, things that may have
Oh,
affected
sure.
him?
Yeah, because there's another character, the Canadian native character,
Tullaby.
who,
Hmm.
yeah, who's uh, gone through the boarding school system,
Right.
where they
mhm.
basically, it was like a genocide, a cultural genocide.
Mm.
But he survives that and joins the Canadian Expeditionary Force, and goes off to the fields of Belgium and France in World War I, as a sniper. So
How great is
he comes back and tries to reclaim his roots that were stolen from him. And I thought, I did I tried to do a lot of research on that too. And I've been in contact with Canadian natives about, getting help on the details. And there's stuff like that. I always think in terms of the characters. To me, the plot is totally subservient to the characters. The
character is
the
story.
plot serves the characters. A lot of writers, they make the characters serve the plot. They're just so the plot just becomes choreography. They're marching these characters towards this end. I have no idea how anything ends. I just get the characters. This is the way I write. I get the characters into a situation, and I pretty much let them write it themselves, because I try to nail the characters as much as I can before I start that process. I have no idea what happens on page 3 until I get to page 2. When I did Silent Interlude, I got halfway through the book, and both Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes had torn their right sleeves. And I said, oh, what can I do with that? And I thought, I'll give them the same tattoo. And then I said, well, why do they have the same tattoo? I had no idea. I had to make that up 5 issues later in number 26 when I did the Snake Eyes origin. But it was,
Wow.
But you see, guys, what Larry's talking about, if I may, is he knows the characters, right? So he doesn't know what's happening with the characters. No writer does until they write it, until they come up with it, until they imagine it. But to know the characters first in the way that they are, like the kind of person they are, who they are, you don't need to know everything about them while you're writing them, but you need to know who they are. Each character is a different voice, and they have a different life. And Larry can take those characters and put them in a situation. And from my days of acting and stuff, you are who you are, and what situation are you in? Now, every character acts different.
Look, when I was an editor, I would tell prospective writers that they came to see me, like, well, tell me a joke. And if they couldn't tell me a joke, I sort of dismissed them out of hand. Because a joke is a story. It has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a good punchline. And if you can't muster the construction to do that, then I doubt your construction in being able to put together a story. And I say, look, have you ever read Peanuts? And they all go, well, yeah, I've been reading Peanuts all my life. And I go, well, tell me what happens in any one given Sunday Peanut strip. And they all go, well, Lucy's holding the football.
Yeah.
And Charlie Brown comes running up, and at the last minute, Lucy snatches away the football, and Charlie Brown goes, I said, wait a minute.
Or Snoopy's lying on the doghouse, or Snoopy's lying on the doghouse, or
Tell
something
me
like that.
one punchline to that setup, and nobody can do it, right? And I said, but if I asked you to write a 1-page psychological profile of any of those characters, write me a profile of Schroeder, write me a profile of Lucy Van Pelt, write me a profile of Linus, you could do it because you met those characters like the way you meet real people in tiny increments every day. So
you get to
know that you feel like you know those characters. Later on I would ask people, look, you've seen all the Harry Potter movies. Can you tell me one single plot from a Harry Potter movie? Nobody can. But they know everything about Hermione. They know everything about Harry. They know all those characters. And nobody went to see the next Harry Potter movie because they said, "Oh man, the plot to the last one was bitching." They go because they like the characters and they want to spend more time with the characters, and that's always been my approach. Um, you
and
know,
yeah, when characters are designed, they all have their own hooks. They have their own things. They have their own voices if they're doing it right. They have their own visuals. They have their own contours. Even the contour of a figure, a character. As a character designer, one thing I learned is what is the silhouette of the character. If you can't come up with a unique silhouette of that character that defines that character, that is easily and understandable, you know instantly it's that character.
absolutely.
Yeah,
You know,
these are
and not only that, but body language.
yes,
You know, when I was writing Wolverine, in order to get into character, I'd get out of my seat and like, you know,
right, yeah,
get, you know, and it's muscle memory. You know,
yes,
you know, when I do fight sequences, I actually get up and try to go through the moves. And you know, if you actually do it right, the muscle memory is embedded in there. You can draw it then. You know, trying to draw action stuff just out of your head, just imagining it, never works. It always looks stiff or, you know, made up.
yeah.
But
You got to do it.
if you get up out of your chair and you actually do it, that gives it a lot of life. And and we're not just talking about fights. We're talking about, you know, body language altogether and attitude. You know, because Wolverine was all about attitude, more so than, you know, just clicking out the snicking out the claws. You know, and uh, that's the hardest and main thing to try to nail down about doing this stuff is to nail the characters so that um, you know, if you a lot of times you write stuff and you get to a point and all of a sudden you start to feel like you're forcing the character to do this stuff to fulfill the needs of the script, and that's wrong. You know, if I get to a point like that, I change the script. You know, when I realize, because you know, I base all the characters on people I actually know, or you know, friends, or people who are very public and have very public personas. Um, so you know, like if I base a GI Joe character on my cousin Randy, and I get to a certain point, you know, in the story, and he react, and I've got him in this position where he has to react with this certain way, and I realize he wouldn't do that. That violates his character.
Right.
No, I'd rather change the plot than violate the character. And I think that's what um, actually contributes to the ongoing popularity is that, you know, keeping the characters absolutely consistent makes people feel very comfortable. You know,
And
it's not,
they get to be involved in them the way in personal ways. You know, each character is like Larry was saying. It's about character. It's the same thing in film. It's about character. You're in the movie industry. You sit down to these meetings. If they're not talking about character and they're talking about scenes, not characters, you're like, what the fuck is going on here?
yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, I'll let you
yeah,
guys
yeah.
ask questions.
No,
Not to interrupt, but I have a question. When
Mhm.
you have a long gestating idea, so you have the idea, and say maybe it takes 5 or plus years to get to it coming to market, or you're actually able to work on it to bring it to an audience. Does that time allow or change how you then look at the characters from when you would have first started it, as opposed to a silent interlude where it's like, yes, of course, the characters are established to a certain extent, but you don't have the time to kind of guess or second guess or double back on characters and their traits?
Well, sometimes you do it on the job.
Yeah.
Like like Silent Incident 21 is like the first introduction of Storm Shadow. So I hadn't drawn him, really didn't know anything about him, and I learned everything about him in the course of those 22 pages. Because I had to really think it out and as about what his motivations were and everything. I mean, I didn't have what I had when I started drawing and writing that book was the idea that Storm Shadow had captured Scarlet in some way and was taking her to the Silent Castle. That's all I had. And everything in that story was created literally page by page. I had no idea what was on page 3 until I got past page 2.
And as far as the time it takes, and does it change? Like if we wait longer, we're all busy professionals. So it's number one. When somebody asks, "What are you doing?" we usually have something to say. So it's not like when we look at it like, okay, I'm working on this now. I got this to do. I got So when next, like I'll talk to Bill Sienkiewicz. I'll say, "Hey, Bill, we're going to do something together because we'll eventually be involved in something." And so I'll be talking to him, and he'll be like, "Yeah, I think in next February." And then I'm like, "Well, yeah, I think maybe in December." But I'm doing 5 shows here, and then I got some family, so then maybe let's do something in how about May? And then we go, okay, May, and then so that's it. It's literally that's a big part of it. First of all, the second part is, we sit down and we throw it around, and these are our passion projects. So we're sitting around and we're talking, and we go, "Hey, I want to do this. I want to do that," and then there's usually an introduction error. There's like no matter how much you work with someone, when you start something new, it's like, who is David Lawrence? Well, David Lawrence is going to grow between the two of us as we go along, and I draw him at every angle could possibly be seen. And as I imagine his breath coming out in the cold, and if he's been injured or if he hasn't, he's going to grow out of that. What is his body reaction in the face of danger? And now Larry, even if he lays it out, I'm sitting there going, in my mind, I feel that cold. I feel that as a finished, like I go into all that, and that all kind of creates just one panel of a certain look or emotion that's created. Kind of defines part of the life of the character. And if you look at like the main cover that I drew, I have it was the story behind that cover was Mounties versus Werewolves. There's a lot of other stuff that happens, but it's Mounties versus Werewolves. So I did a cover that shows our main character, our main villain, and it shows a backstory of the werewolf. The Mountie jacket is torn apart. There's a werewolf head on a spike. That's brutal. But who did that? It wasn't another werewolf, and yet it's brutal. And then you see the Mounties running on the horses to a charge forth, and you see there's dead guys there who look like they might have been dead for quite some time. Some who have just died, but notice those are all Mounties. So I put the atmosphere is a character in itself, and we have mist and it interacts with the rest. You see the werewolf head is bleeding out right there. That just happened. So what does that mean? That we're in the midst of a battle. But Larry's title is Mounties versus Werewolves. And he stated that this is traditional werewolves that become werewolves by the moon. And if you look at David Lawrence's hat, I added something on his hat. He wears that hat and it has slashes in it. So right there, This is he doesn't he could get a new hat, but he's wearing that hat. This is a man who was deep in this and is involved in this, and this is his thing, and he's not changing that hat. That's his hat. That's his Mounties hat. But this is Mounties vs. Werewolves, and it tells the story. You look at the character holding it up. There's some scars I put on the character. There's things, but Larry's thought process is Mounties versus Werewolves. And that's what you're going to get, and that's what I do, and that's how it all comes out. The atmosphere, everything.
Absolutely incredible. So this is a brand new project from both of you, and I am always fascinated at when creators actually create brand new characters. And between the two of you, you've created characters over the decades. How because Larry, you've already spoken about how your thought process is and how things develop, but where does the core essence of because you also in previous mentioned that sometimes you base it off of people and their personalities and things like that. For this particular story, was there any one character that you had in mind when creating the main character himself, as well as his chief rival in the story?
Well, sometimes they're like composites of like a number of people. David Lawrence is sort of like a composite of two people I knew from a long time ago, and the werewolf character is an actual French person that I knew a long time ago. So,
which, by the way, my name is actually French. Not to cut in, but
yeah, it should be pronounced Guy.
Yes.
I think maybe I'm the only one that ever calls him Guy.
Yeah. That's my real name. My father was from France.
You know what? There's a lot of Canadian hockey players that were called Guy back in the day, so it's an easy transition for me because when I was 8 or 9, I'd pronounce it as Guy Lafleur, and then I found that it was Guy Lafleur, and then then once I got that correction when I was 9 or 10, now I start calling people who's supposed to be Guy. I assume it's Guy, and actually it's Guy. So I actually have the opposite problem. So.
Yeah, I used to think it was Guy de Maupassant. And because I read a lot as a kid, and so I had no idea how names were pronounced or places were pronounced. So in my head, it was, I read the Iliad and the Odyssey in the 6th grade, and I thought Odysseus' wife's name was Penelope, rhyming with cantaloupe. And I couldn't even take a stab at pronouncing Odysseus from what I saw printed on the page. I just sort of like mumbled in my head when I came to his name. But yeah.
So go ahead, guys. You got questions?
I'm just amazed and in awe of the scope of the project as well. Steve, do you have anything to add? Or
one thing I am wondering is how far back are you going to have the werewolf lore without going into spoilers, or will that go into spoilers?
Well, they're originally French. They came over, with the whole after the whole Huguenot thing. There was this suppression of the Protestants in France, and that's how we ended. You ended up with the Quebecois. And then you had those same people migrate south to Louisiana and become the Cajuns. So I guess maybe eventually, there'll be like a Louisiana branch of this.
wow.
Yeah, Just
if it gets going, and we go into other media, it's like there were all these CSI spin-offs. So
Yeah.
100%.
Well,
Mounties versus Louisiana State Police versus Werewolves.
We have some great comments in the chat. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. It's always great to see the chat interacting with the guests. Jay Coombs, Larry, you made my early teenage years the most inspiring, exciting, and memorable.
Well, thank you.
Jermaine says, "Living legends." Thank you, Jermaine. That's amazing. Gaz says, "Mr. Dorian, Mr. Hama," and
Yes.
it's nice to meet you.
Yeah.
G. Lee is also saying hello to Mr. Hama.
oh, hi.
Yeah.
Same thing with
Yeah.
Victor Matthews.
Grace.
Steve Vendetta. Larry, whatever happened to Oxido, the book you were supposed to do with Pablo Raimondi?
Well, we got, it was one of those things. Lots of times you work on a project and you just, it sort of runs out of steam. We just weren't able to really get
That's
anybody else interested in it.
That's what I was kind of saying. Like you'll find the time. The time will come. It either will or it won't. But when it comes, you want it to come at the right time. And everything is not meant to come out that you create as creators.
Right.
It's not meant to come out all the time right away.
Absolutely.
Yeah, look, 20 years ago, I wrote a novel about teenage vampires, and all my agents loved it. Patricia Burke, who was the vice president of literary acquisitions at Paramount, loved it. And she sent it around to all these publishers, and they all sent back the same note that nobody will ever be interested in teenage vampires. So, a few years later, when those sparkly vampires came around, I said, well, look, hey, and they said, oh, well, now it's done.
Oh my God, the gold mines that people leave behind. It's
well, my agent keeps telling me that I'm always like 10 years ahead of the curve, and
I think you're creating the curve as you go along anyway, Larry.
Absolutely.
Right, guys?
Absolutely, 100%.
So, Jay, just one question. So,
well, I wrote a Chinatown noir novel, about a noir novel about a Chinese gang kid that grows up and then becomes a Marvel comic artist, and then gets involved with the mob, in a situation. And again, my agents loved it, and they sent it around, and all the publishers said, well, no one's ever going to buy an Asian protagonist in the mystery genre. And I was like, what, Charlie Chan and Mr. Moto never existed?
It was always interesting for me, as I grew up from the time I was 7 years old, watching films and stuff in Cantonese and sometimes in Mandarin, and watching the shows, and my life was just Asian lead characters, mostly Chinese, and it was weird for me. The world was very different for me when people said, "Oh, we now have Asian leads in America," and I always wondered why there weren't as many. First of all, or pretty much any when I was growing up, but I got to see it there, but for me it was different because I was used to seeing it. But it's great to see now that there's a lot of diversity in film, and I'm happy for that, because. Somebody was talking. I was on a Scooby-Doo panel recently, and they're doing a Japanese Scooby-Doo film, TV. It's TV or movie. I can't remember. In Japan, and they're going to do monsters in it, and the real monsters. I'm like, well, who does kaiju? Who does monsters better than Japan? I'm like, and they're like, yeah, but why isn't it American? I'm like, what do you think? These properties only exist for us? They're all over the world. There's people of all different languages.
Well, yeah, but people, they always think, oh, they can do it better. All those American-made Godzilla movies.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
when you compare them to Godzilla, -1, oh
Oh,
my
minus one was the best.
God.
Wait,
There's
there's
there's no comparison.
No.
no, not even not even a barely a comparison. But
No,
anyway,
and
off
because
subject
minus
here.
one stands as a good movie in its own right. It's not just a
Because
genre
it's about
piece,
characters. It's very much about the
and
characters
and
that
and the
Godzilla's
Yeah.
about.
diversity thing is really, boom. But the one question I've always had for the last year is like, if you could retcon, black people into Lord of the Rings as elves and dwarves, well, where are the Asians?
It's amazing. It's amazing all around when you look at the world. Not trying to get off the subject. We get back onto Mounties versus Werewolves in a second, but the for me, my family is half black, and there's people from Mexico in my family who lived there, who grew up there, came here. There's Asian, Mexican. It's a melting pot. My family's a melting pot, I'm proud that that's a representation of my family. So when people see photos of us, they see the representation of humans around the world. But there is no. I'll just say this at the end. There's only one race. It's just like Bruce Lee said. It's only one race. It's the human race. And when we can't, when we think that it's odd to mix them into stories, or anyone has a problem, I don't understand it. It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, because it's like you're stuck in a bubble. You must, you grew up in a bubble. Where open your eyes. There's an entire world out there, and I've been all over it, and it's just incredibly beautiful and cultural and everything. And I hope and know that Larry finds a way to make sure that everybody fits in a certain way. It's like people forget that in history there was trade, and they traveled in boats from different countries and interacted. And it's like, well, they weren't all from the same place, knuckleheads. So I love it, and that's one of the things I love about Mounties vs. Werewolves. Larry found a way to keep diverse characters in there as they are, for who they are, for the world that they lived in, from their eyes, and the stories from. But anyway, back to Mounties vs. Werewolves, like we were talking about.
Yeah, there's again. Well, let Steve pose a question. Then there are a bunch more chats.
Yeah,
submitted.
it's
Yeah,
more about XJ. It's more about the, for lack of a term, I guess the gatekeeping, or like the short-sightedness of those who are saying this project is ready now for the audience. Does crowdfunding and being able to create your own product and get it out to an audience on your own, does that liberate you as a creator, as creators? Does that allow you to say, look, I don't have to worry about someone saying no one would ever read anything about teenage vampires. I'm just going to make the story and let the audience decide whether they like it.
Absolutely. I've always tried to ignore editorial interference anyway. I mean, when they, they tried to tell me what to do with GI Joe a number of times, and I just said, well, in that case, I quit. And then they changed their minds.
Like I said with Rom, same thing. I could
Yeah,
not draw the helmet.
yeah, I'm not gonna take that. And after a while, you know, they figured it out. Especially with, like Hasbro fired me off the file cards after the second year because somebody said, well, why are we paying this guy, all this money to write these file cards when you get some kid in the office to do them? So they got some kid in the office to write the file cards. And a week later, they called me back and said, well, we'd like you to be back on the file cards. And I said, well, it's fine, but my rate just doubled.
Yeah.
And so that was my way of getting a raise every year. They would, a new person would come in and they'd kick me off the file cards. And then they try to get them done by somebody else. And they realize that, oh, this is a very sort of specific thing. You can't have, some bozo who never been in the military or doesn't know anything about this stuff to write it. Um, that was one thing. Another thing that I learned in the military is always, in any situation, make yourself irreplaceable.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Jay, you had comments you wanted to read? Is that right?
Yeah, there are a bunch of comments flooding in right now. Let's ask him.
Okay.
Gaz says this seems like it should have been a 1940s Republic Pictures movie serial. It does feel like that, actually.
Well, no, it's going to have a much grittier. Think in terms of Deadwood.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gritty.
Chaz says, "Look at this awesome panel." Thank you, Chaz. Same Time Toys says, "Larry, you definitely started something with that same tattoo gimmick. 100%. It started.
I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of tattoos I've seen. There's just as many, and there's just as many Cobra sigils out there too,
Right.
as the
100%.
Arashikage's crest. Yeah.
Absolutely. Treasures for Trigger. Treasure for Trigger.
That's my buddy Phil. Hey, bud.
Good to see you, Phil. He's listening, and it's his morning. Same Time Toys lipo moment. If you think about it, 100%. That was definitely a lipo moment. Gas. Texas Rangers versus Werewolves. I mean, lone
Gas.
Chuck Norris star in that one?
yes.
Well, I think
Gaz would be
wasn't
all
there a
over it.
flop movie of Cowboys versus aliens or something?
Yeah,
Yeah, there was. I think
Done right.
Harrison Ford was in it. I think.
It's just
Daniel Craig too.
Clint Jorgensen. Larry, everyone in Salt City is excited for you to be there later this month.
Yeah. I've never been to Salt Lake City. This should be fun.
That's amazing. Steve Vendetta. Since the story deals with Mounties, are you comfortable drawing horses, Guy?
Am I comfortable drawing horses? That's a really good question, Steve. It is not easy to render horses constantly, and a lot of things I've done have things that I've never really delved into drawing. Like, people think that, oh, it's just this and you can draw it. Oh, it's just that and you could draw it. It is very difficult to learn how to do some of those things. Sorry, my dog's barking. But you know what? I am not some kind of I'm a professional, so I will be drawing those damn horses correctly, and I will have fun drawing them, because that's just a part of it. When you're a professional, whatever is thrown your way, that's what makes you become, like, people say, well, what's the difference between, well, I could draw something well too. And I'm like, really? Okay, you draw something well, but what happens when they slam it on your table? You never drew it before. You barely have a reference for it that you need in the time that you need it. And you have 8 panels to do, and it starts off in space with a specific rocket ship, and then goes to a backstory of World War I, where the clothes have to be right, the guns have to be right, the hair has to be right. Then we go, oh, and then they switch the scene on us, and now we're walking through Manhattan at nighttime through Times Square. Well, that's my effing job to do it. And you suck it up, and that's what makes you a professional. You suck it up, you find a way, and you do it. You succeed at it, and you move on. And that's how all of it is. Horses, yeah, bring them on.
Yeah, the thing about drawing horses, it's usually the office that if you've never actually, ridden a horse or been around them, it's kind of hard to adjust it in your head. When in the 70s, I used to drive out to Gray Morrow's house, and he had all these drawing tables, and me and Ed Davis would drive out there and draw all afternoon, and then drink a lot, and then go down to the basement and shoot pistols at he had a range in his basement with a bullet trap. And then after that, Gray had a horse named Autumn that he was quartered at a stable, like maybe 2 miles from his house, and we go out there and ride around on his horse, and then go back and draw more and
Sounds
shoot
like
more.
Billy.
And there was
And Steve, the guy who asked the question, yeah, it just turns out, Steve, that I actually owned horses and a farm, and I owned horses for over 30 years. So I think I'm all right.
Mhm.
And then, of course, he follows up with, "Will any of the horses be bitten or eaten by werewolves?"
Well, yeah. I mean, if you know anything about, World War One and World War Two, there were more, equestrian
Yeah.
casualties than almost anything else.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
they were soldiers.
yeah, in World War Two, the Germans, were still using horses to pull artillery and stuff, and the horses are much bigger targets than humans, and they got killed left and right in both wars.
Crazy. And of course, yeah, that it's such a sad thing too for anybody who's a lover of horses. Gaz, okay, I want to read that book that Mr. Dorian just described.
Well, there's a monument in England, in London, to all the animals that served in the wars. Horses and mules and dogs
That's amazing.
and carrier pigeons.
Really?
Yeah.
Of course, why not? They're all part of it.
That's amazing.
And you could bet that you'll see all kinds of stuff. Wait till you see Mounties vs. Werewolves and what's going to happen. It's just going to be and as we continue with your help and with you being involved, we look at a lot of the fans are partners in many ways, and you pay for the television you want to see and you watch the shows that you want to watch. This is going to be one that we make as entertaining as possible, with characters you could enjoy. You could pick one character, or you could pick them all. You could pick a werewolf, or you could pick them all. You could be on the werewolf side or the Mountie side.
I have to turn into a pumpkin in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
If you got any questions for me specifically, you should shoot them my way.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have.
Let's talk about the campaign. Let's finish up with the campaign.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and finish up the campaign really quickly. So thank you guys for all those wonderful questions. You guys are awesome. The campaign right now sits at, if I can actually get it right, where is it here? There it is. Right now, the campaign is actually sitting at 33,984. It went up a little bit in the time we were talking. So thank you guys for all the support. We're literally just shy of our goal. Only about 1,000 and like $10, like
16.
Really
somebody's
close.
got to get you a calculator, Jay.
I really need a calculator.
I'm sending you a calculator.
It is Canadian math, by the way. But I mean, seriously, we are so close. We are so close, guys. And there are a ton of rewards. And we've just been talking all about the amazing characters. There is the the native Canadian that we were talking about, right? Yeah, and of course the werewolf himself, the werewolf character himself, the
Pierre Perdue
character,
Melisandre.
And we haven't talked about this young lady though. So
that's Melisandre.
Oh, that's Alessandra.
Oh, Melisandre.
Nice.
Just like the Game of Thrones character's name. I love that name.
Yeah. And you guys can read all about the characters themselves in the Kickstarter. Let's talk a little bit about some of the rewards. So at $25 plus shipping, we get cover A, which of course was done by Guy Dorian himself. This comes with a 48-page double debut issue, plus exclusive David Lawrence trading card. So we can that's amazing. Covered by Guy Dorian, a senior Kevin Conrad, and Candace Han. At cover B is $25, which is a variant cover, which is done by Mark Spears, Larry Hama, and Guy Dorian Sr. It also comes with an exclusive trading card. Pere Perdue
to see us tomorrow.
And
the only time he's not available.
Yeah, we also have
you can hit mute on yours for a minute.
Sorry, what was that?
I'm sorry, I was talking to Larry.
No, that's okay.
What?
We have cover C, which is $25 plus shipping, 48-page double spread, debut issue plus exclusive Tulabi Bradshaw. Sorry, if I'm pronouncing these names wrong. Bradshaw trading card, variant cover by Scott Hanna, and cover D is that wonderful. Is that a painting? It looks amazing.
Yeah, it's a painting. It's an acrylic painting.
It is incredible. My gosh. The exclusive trading card of Melisandre, de, I cannot pronounce it. Octican?
L'Occitane, I believe.
L'Octican.
L'Occitana. It's like a store at the mall.
And the
Well,
beautiful.
that's a region in the south of France. The in English, it was a very different part of France. France was very divided for a long time.
Mhm.
So it is called the Aquitaine in anglicized form.
Mhm.
Um,
Amazing.
yeah.
And this variant cover is by J.K. Woodward, which
Yep.
again, amazing artwork. And then we have a mystery cover,
I like
which
mysteries.
which will be done by horror master Kelly Jones. So this is not the cover; that's actually Kelly Jones on the cover, but it'll be a mystery cover.
I like
And,
mysteries.
we all love mysteries. And Pere Perdu is the actual trading card there. And then there's a crowdfunding exclusive, $75 plus shipping. You can get the exclusive David Lawrence bust cast from a traditional sculpt by Guy Dorian Sr. This is amazing. How long did it take you to make that one, Guy?
4 hours.
4 hours. An exclusive Mark Spears trading card. That's gonna be. Is this a one of one, or is there multiple ones that are going to be made cast of this?
You get a cast. You get
Okay,
a
you
resin
get a cast.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I'm not for me to sculpt it by hand for you. It's thousands of dollars. So you'll get it by hand. Resin.
Another exclusive for the crowdfund is the Pere Perdu Werewolves one. Another cast which will be available and comes with its own trading card. At $80, you get the limited edition hardcover, 56-page hardcover with exclusive black and white cover by Larry Hama and Guy Dorian Sr., including a signed and numbered bookplate and bonus black and white trading card. This was a limited run. So guys, don't sleep on this one. This one, it might actually already be. Has that one already sold out? Because that's
I think there's still some left.
Okay, let's have a look. This one is. Yep, there are a few left, but not many. There are only 194 left of these. So guys, don't sleep on this one. This one's a little fast. The full moon pack. This is the one which I think a lot of people are going to want. $100 plus shipping. You get covers A through E, the respective trading cards in the bundle discount. So that's amazing, especially if you want to get all those signed by the writers and creators. The Blood Moon pack is $200. It includes covers A through E plus the limited edition hardcover and the trading cards. The Silver Bullet pack is $350 plus shipping, all the covers plus the sculptures. That one's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And of course, the 30-minute meet and greet pack. This one, I think a lot of people would be very interested. There are only 4 available at $1,000 each. Has this one sold out yet, or do we have a few left?
No, I think one has sold so far.
I believe you are right.
Yeah, it's a chance to sit with
We have
Larry.
3 left. Yep.
Yeah,
Go
it's a chance to sit with us and talk with us. Like whatever questions you got, if somebody ever wanted to ask, if they just want to talk to Larry and say G.I. Joe, and all they say is G.I. Joe the entire time, we'll be listening to them say G.I. Joe for 30 minutes.
This is a virtual meet and greet. Is that correct?
Yep.
Virtual meet and greet. Okay.
Oh, there is a real meet and greet, but
Yeah, we're
going
to get to that in a second for sure. But we do have another 60-minute meet and greet. So this was the 30-minute meet and greet. This one is the 60-minute meet and greet at $2,000.
And you get all the other stuff, packs, everything.
Yep. And there are only 4 available on this. And then this one's a lot of fun. I think a lot of people always like having this one. This is a Appear in the Comic Book pack, $2,300 plus shipping. Become immortalized by appearing in Mounties vs. Werewolves and have your likeness drawn by Larry Hama and Guy Dorian Sr. Includes all covers and sculptures. This one's a lot of fun. There are only 4 available on this one, and it's already had 1 backer. So there are only 3 spots available for this one, guys. Definitely look into this one because it's not going to last very long. And finally, we do have the Royal Dinner, the Royal Rider Dinner. So you actually get to sit and have dinner with Larry Hama and Guy Dorian Sr. This will be a restaurant in New York. You have to provide your own transportation to New York.
I do too. So
exactly. So it's you're not suffering alone. And two other backers, including all covers, sculptures, and appear in the comics. So there are only 3 spots available for this one, guys.
Yeah, you get everything, and we hang out with you.
Absolutely. And of course, you have dinner too. So you
Yeah,
know,
we have dinner.
yeah. And then the Feast and Fright private dinner and hangout. This is only one available. So this is you and the 2 creators having an intimate dinner. That one's at $10,000.
And what that one's a hangout.
Okay.
Again, that one's a full hangout. Like Larry and I will be hanging out with you in New York City. We're going to go to a comic shop. We're going to go to dinner. We're going to hang out. We're going to talk. We're going to do all this stuff. You'll get everything that is offered through the campaign, and personal time with us. You want to take selfies. You want to go live, all that stuff. You get all that jazz, like the full day with me and Larry hanging out.
Excellent. And finally, let me just switch this back. And finally, actually, that is the final.
That was the final one.
That is the final one. And guys, thank you again for hanging out with us. This has been an amazing afternoon. Again, we're sitting at 33,984. We are practically there. We only need another $1,000 and a bit to get us to our goal. 544 backers, 9 days to go. What an amazing campaign! And guys, please. If it's within your means, and of course, if you do love comics, you do love wonderful fantasy like this, and just an incredible writing, of course, from the legends Larry Hama and Guy Dorian Jr., and of course, the artwork is just top notch. Please consider backing this project because in 9 days it's going to go crazy. And of course, if you want to be in the comic book, you have that opportunity here with us today. Ken had to go, so we thank Ken for dropping by and having fun with us. But I'd like to thank our special guests, Larry Hama and Guy Dorian Sr., for being with us today. We do have a couple of comments quickly before we log off with these two, and thank you again for spending some time with us, guys. Really quickly, though, we'll say this. We'll basically log off on this one. Kirk HT, those file cards were great on the Joes. Thank you, Kirk. Mr. Hama, everyone really does appreciate all the work you put into this. And Guy, all the work you've done in comics so far. Steve, I mean, what else is there to say except to back this project?
Absolutely. Let's get them to their goal and push it even higher. This is a book that I think we all need to see, and we'd like to see this series go on for multiple issues for sure.
I'm very excited.
Thanks for having us,
Larry. Thank you so much, guys.
It was our pleasure.
So is there any final words you'd like to give the crowd before we log off, Mr. Hama?
Not much.
Like I said it all.
Man, a few words, but you know what?
I've been wagging my, I've been talking a lot.
Yeah.
Well, we love it. We love it so much. Guy,
now I got to go cook some dinner, so I got to go.
Me too. Well, I'll just say this. First, for Larry and I and the Good Alien team, I want to shout out to my son, Guy Dorian Jr., who busted his rump on this campaign. He really kicked butt. He's a great part of Good Alien. And I want to say thanks to everybody, and thank you for having us, and I really appreciate it.
You guys are freaking amazing. Again, legends here, guys. We do have 2 legends here. Thank you guys so much for spending some time with us. Guys, please don't forget, back the project. We really need your help to get us over
Share
the last bit.
Share,
and of course, share the project, please. Check out Mounties and Werewolves. We will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.